Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 144, A Shadow of a Drought. The episode begins with Ash and the gang walking through not a forest, but a road this time, and it was a very fucking hot day. Brock even noticed that all the crops nearby were dying out. Ash and the gang eventually get so tired from walking in the heat that they just have to stop, and Misty sends out her Staryu to use its water gun like a fountain to create a little bit of rain so that they can cool down. Brock and Misty then change into their bathing suits somehow and play in the water with Pikachu and Togepi, finally happy that they were getting cooled down. Ash wants to get in on the action as well, so he sends out his Squirtle and tries to have him create an even bigger fountain and little pool area. However, Squirtle misunderstands the assignment and fires his water gun, not creating a fountain, but he fires it at Ash, trying to cool him down directly. Unfortunately, despite Squirtle's good intentions, its water gun was too powerful and Ash goes flying into a rock. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were walking down the same road as well, although they were a bit farther up. They were of course also dying of heat, and demanded Meowth to give them their canteen. However, Meowth, also being a thirsty bastard, already drank the entire thing without even bothering to check if Jesse and James wanted any. This leads Jesse and James to get pissed the fuck off, and they almost hit Meowth into the stratosphere, but just then, Meowth spots a well in the distance, commenting how it resembled a Slowpoke for some reason. Jesse and James, along with Meowth, who was still thirsty despite drinking the water, rushed to the well in an effort to get some. Although Meowth would have likely rather to have been on the receiving end of some more water, as soon as they arrive at the well, Jesse and James force him to be the one to pump the water, as they sit patiently at the well, waiting for the water to flow into their mouths. But, unfortunately, when Meowth pumps, all that comes out is sand, not water, hitting Team Rocket in the face, pissing Team Rocket off even further. To stop Jesse and James from pummeling him, Meowth manages to come up with another idea, which is using a pair of divining rods to find water underground and then dig for it. He soon finds a spot, but argues that since he was the one working the divining rods, Jesse and James should be the one to dig, and they reluctantly accept, as they were just desperate for some water. So they dig underground, hoping to find some water, but before they can find some, they get too tired from digging in the heat. Meowth gets fed up with Jesse and James because of this, so he decides to send out a new secret machine that he had been building, known as the Super Diglett Mark II, in order to accomplish some digging for them. The machine, which looked like a cross between a tank and a Diglett, appeared from below the ground where Jesse and James were digging, thanks to Meowth's remote control, and this caused Jesse and James to get lifted up by the mech, much to their surprise and anger, as Jesse threw her shovel down at Meowth, knocking him out. After Jesse and James recovered from their initial anger, though, they realized that Meowth had a great idea with this machine, and they proceeded to hop in with the knocked out Meowth, and dig below the spot where they had currently reached, and made their way underground until their machine essentially got fucked up by some falling rocks underground, almost knocking all of them out. So they got out of the machine, only to find a sparkling pool of water inside the underground chamber they were currently in. Obviously, they immediately rushed out of the machine to take a drink, fucking dipping their heads in the water furiously, not even bothering to look around them. However, when they come up from the water and finally look around, they find themselves surrounded by a whole bunch of goddamn Slowpoke. Meowth questions why there's so many Slowpoke down here when they walk a little further and stumble upon a sign that identifies the place they were currently in as Slowpoke Well. So they had in fact found themselves in a well underground. Damn, that was lucky. The sign also has a legend on it that says that the Slowpoke have the power to make it rain when they yawn. This gives Team Rocket the idea to capture the Slowpoke so that they could get rich by charging people a whole bunch of money in exchange for the Slowpoke to make it rain. Essentially, since it was so hot out, Team Rocket thought that people would be desperate to make rain appear, so they would take advantage of them by selling them Slowpoke for extremely high prices. However, when they tried to go up to the Slowpoke and capture them, it didn't go very well, and they just ended up in the water. So they came up with an idea to repair their machine and use it to capture the Slowpoke. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang had finally arrived at their next destination, Azalea Town. That's right, we actually arrived at a major landmark midway through the episode. Insane. What Brock found more insane, though, was the fact that the river was dry. Brock's guidebook explains to him that the reasoning for the river running dry was because of a recent drought going through Azalea Town. Ash didn't seem to care about this drought, though. All he cared about was going to the Azalea Gym. Misty, on the other hand, only cared about giving the GS ball to Kurt, like they were instructed to do from Professor Oak. They proceed to argue about their clash of ideals, but Brock quickly cuts them off when he notices a sign that informed him that the Azalea Gym was also closed because of the drought. Was there just, no fucking water in the entire town, so, people were dying, so they couldn't run the gym? Why would they close the gym due to a drought? But, anyways, a depressed Ash agreed with Misty in this case that now the only thing that they could do was go to Kurt's house anyway, so they tried their best to look for Kurt's house, exploring the entire town to do so. As they walked around town, they noticed some strange signs depicting Slowpoke everywhere, along with just Slowpoke everywhere on the streets. So there was signs and actual Slowpoke. The entirety of Azalea Town seemed to just be purely Slowpoke. Because of the Slowpoke literally infesting the streets, Ash had no choice really but to step on one. Although he did it by accident, and he initially didn't even realize that he stepped on it because the Slowpoke didn't even react. At least for a few seconds, because if you recall from that one episode with the Slowpoke and Shelder, Slowpoke have a delayed reaction to pain because they're so fucking dumb. So when the Slowpoke eventually cries out in pain, one of the townsfolk, a little bitch kid, comes to its aid and assumes that someone must have stepped on it and immediately accuses Ash as he was the closest one nearby. A bunch of people then start claiming that they saw Ash step on Slowpoke, and this causes everyone in the town to form a huge mob and chase Ash and the gang in anger, insinuating that everyone in this town was fucking obsessed with Slowpoke, as if that wasn't obvious by them being everywhere, but they must have hailed them as gods or some shit. I'm sure this doesn't have absolutely anything to do with the drought going on. Anyways, the townsfolk all try and chase Ash and the gang all the way out of town, but fortunately, Ash and the gang are able to lose the crowd by hiding in a park, where they suddenly stumble across a man in the bushes in a slowpoke costume, as he instructs Ash and the gang to put on slowpoke costumes as well, so that they can hide. Ash and the gang are initially reluctant, but they put on the costumes and sit with the man by the fountain, and this causes all of the townsfolk who come rushing by the fountain to give up on their search for Ash and the gang, as all that they saw were what they believed to be 4 slowpoke. Ash and the gang were grateful to the man in the costume for saving them, but Brock still questioned why everyone in the town, including this guy, likes slowpoke so goddamn much. It's then that we finally get the reveal from the man that 400 years ago there was a drought exactly like the one currently, but one day a slowpoke came to town, and when it yawned, rain finally began and the town was saved, and all the crops were restored. So now we know where the legend that Team Rocket found came from, and it certainly made sense why everyone loved the slowpoke. Despite this answer though, Misty still had one big question: why the fuck was this dude even wearing a slowpoke costume in the first place? The man clarified that he was doing so because he didn't want to scare the slowpoke away, because if the humans managed to scare the slowpoke away, then they would have no chance of catching them yawn, and therefore the slowpoke would save the city from this current drought going on. The man then dashes off, stating that he had something important to go do. What was this important thing he had to go do, you may ask? Well, he was going to go to the slowpoke well, no joke intended, and check on the slowpoke down there to make sure they were doing good. When he arrived outside the well, though, he heard some noises coming from the slowpoke, so he began to panic and ran inside the cave that Team Rocket had created by drilling in the ground. He was already alarmed by the sudden appearance of the cave entrance, but he became even more alarmed when he spotted Team Rocket, who were back in their fixed machine and using it to capture all the slowpoke. He yells at Team Rocket to quit their bullshit and stop harming the slowpoke, but since he was still in his own slowpoke costume, Team Rocket just mistake him for an especially rare larger slowpoke and become interested in chasing after him, leading the man to run away in fear, although he hurts his back. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang were still looking for Kurt in Azalea Town when they stumbled upon a little girl who turned out to be Kurt's granddaughter, and she informed them that Kurt wasn't home because he had gone to do something at Slowpoke Well. Did the man that saved them earlier happen to be Kurt? I guess we'll find out. Now, if I were Ash and the gang, I would have just told the granddaughter to lead me to Kurt's house and then just wait at Kurt's house for him to come back. But Ash and the gang decided to go to the Slowpoke Well, and they entered the hole to the cave that Team Rocket had dug. When they do, they instantly find the man in the Slowpoke costume laying there. He warns them about Team Rocket's machine, explaining that he just barely managed to get away, but now his back was fucked and he couldn't get up. Brock tells Ash and Misty to go further and confront the giant machine, while he stays back to help the man in the Slowpoke suit get up. When Ash and Misty encounter the machine, Ash remarks that it looks suspiciously like something Team Rocket would build, and as if on cue, Team Rocket hop out of the machine and do their motto, stating their plan to capture the Slowpoke, as they proceeded to capture several of them in nets deployed from the machine. Just then, Brock arrives with the man in the Slowpoke suit, revealing that he couldn't get him to stand up. His back really was fucked, so Brock carried him all the way to where Ash and Misty were on his back. You actually did something good, Brock. Nice job. The man in the Slowpoke suit then pleads with Ash to do something to save all the Slowpoke, and Ash agrees as he goes to send out his Pikachu to use Thunderbolt on Team Rocket as usual. However, James warns him not to, as if he did, then the Slowpoke would also get shocked because the electricity would conduct all the surrounding water. Ash simply comes up with a new strategy, though, being to send out Heracross and have him use his brute strength to lift Team Rocket's machine up into the air, with Team Rocket on it. However, right as he lifts it up, Team Rocket fires a missile from the machine, which knocks him down. As Ash is recalling Heracross into his Pokeball, Team Rocket takes the opportunity to escape by digging a tunnel deeper underground with their machine, laughing at Ash's misfortune as they did so, escaping with all the Slowpoke they captured. However, Ash soon finds out that Team Rocket didn't capture all the Slowpoke, as one then lets out a cry that awakens several others that were sleeping, and they all proceed to walk out of the cave that Team Rocket had dug. Ash and the gang were mystified by this. Slowpoke were usually lazy as fuck, and now they had all suddenly got up and started walking out in unison. They had to go investigate, and while they did, Brock still hauled this guy in the Slowpoke suit on his back. The Slowpoke and Ash and the gang eventually made their way outside the cave as all the Slowpoke climbed up onto a cliff and proceeded to cry out in unison and then yawn. Sure enough, just as the legend had stated, the Slowpoke yawning causes storm clouds to appear and rain to follow immediately after. It rains so heavily that Ash and the gang and the guy in the Slowpoke suit are forced to climb up to the top of the well due to the immense flooding that was taking place. If the entire area was flooding, I'm sure you could imagine that the open cave was flooding as well, and the water proceeded to rush all throughout the cave, even down to the new spot where Team Rocket was currently digging, and it proceeded to wash their machine out of the cave. And as the water reached the end of where Team Rocket had currently dug to, it started to trail back, and this dragged Team Rocket's machine all the way back out, where they came out of the entrance of the cave, breaking the machine in half in the process. An extremely battered Team Rocket crawled out of their destroyed machine, only to see that all the water had stopped flowing and had reached a stalemate in the cave. Likely running into a rock or something, who knows. But the point was, all the water was now in the cave, so the area wasn't flooded, at least. It was drenched by water, thankfully, because, the area needed it, but there was no flood. Team Rocket couldn't celebrate the fact that they weren't killed by the flood for long, though, as when they had came out of the cave, they of course arrived back at the entrance, like I said, and who was waiting near the entrance to the cave? Ash and the gang. So Ash instantly ordered his Pikachu to use Thunderbolt and sent Team Rocket blasting off. They had tried to escape back into their destroyed machine, but it was futile. With Team Rocket gone, Ash and the gang then went inside the machine's remains and freed all the Slowpoke from the nets. With all the Slowpoke reunited, they stare at each other, perhaps too dumb to even fully know what had just happened. Brock was unsure what had just happened himself, as he questioned if the Slowpoke really caused all that rainfall just by yawning. Ash believed that they did, citing the legend, and as for the Slowpoke guy, he simply watched the rainbow in the sky, as he pointed out that the Pokemon world was full of mysteries. Okay, so you're not even going to confirm if the legend was true or nothing? We're just supposed to assume that it was, I guess? Anyways, Ash and the gang then returned to Azalea Town to find that just like the legend 400 years ago, the Slowpoke rain had ended the drought, as the river was back to normal and the crops were recovering. Also, water was back in the fountain in the park, which had been missing previously, now allowing a lot of the Slowpoke to take a dip in the fountain, thereby cleaning up a lot of the messy streets, as a lot of the Slowpoke now had a new place to go. Ash and the gang go to return to the park, where they see the Slowpoke in the fountain, as they still thought that everyone in the town was mad at them, so they wanted to make sure they were still hiding out in the park. However, the Slowpoke guy reveals that he successfully managed to calm the townspeople down after explaining that Ash had only stepped on the Slowpoke's tail by accident. I don't know how the Slowpoke guy even knew this, though. Like, he must have been in the town when Ash initially stepped on it. That's what I'm going with. But anyways, the Slowpoke guy then offers to take Ash and the gang on a tour of the town, now that they weren't wanted by literally everybody, but Misty declines, stating that they had more important business, such as finding Kurt. Upon hearing the name Kurt, the Slowpoke guy then takes off his mask and reveals that he was Kurt, much to Ash and the gang's shock, even though it was pretty fucking obvious.